Hello, this is Jason Heretic PB of GamingCentrum.com, and I have been requested on YouTube to do a tutorial for OBS, and I'm going to try to do that. It will be OBS Studio, not default OBS. And forgive me, my throat's really dry. I don't know. I hope I'm not coming down with anything, which wouldn't be good because I'm going on vacation here pretty quick. But anyway, I was asked to do a tutorial by Carlos Mike about a day ago, which basically was yesterday. And I'll go ahead and try to show what I do. And Prewarned, I'm not a professional, I'm not the company, so it could be different. And it's also going to be a little different because I'm recording, so there options may not be showing up as they should be. But I'm going to go ahead and show. So let me move this over here. And for most games, you would do a game capture. Some picky games you have to do display capture, which is basically grabbing this entire monitor, which it is doing here. And as you can see with me recording, how I'm recording, the CPU is nothing, but obviously nothing really is running. So if you go into settings, and we'll just go to general, pretty much this is what I have. It's pretty much default. So you can move to stream, and you can set it to custom streaming server or streaming services, and you pick whichever of the billion streaming services. Not too important for a tutorial, because I'm sure by now most streamers and recorders can figure that out. Output is something that can be played with for centuries, but I have mine to advanced, and like I said, because it's recording, some of the options will not be available. But I go to advanced. I set it to, for streaming, I set it to X264. This one is checked, and there's several types and options. Most streaming sites, and even just recording locally sometimes, says CBR, which is constant. I've noticed with streaming though, setting it to ABR is actually better. And you set a bit rate. I set a high bit rate. Sometimes it doesn't work to certain streaming sites, especially if you go through restreaming.io. They kind of tell you limits. If you connect directly though, the bit rate actually is followed a little bit more. But for rate control ABR, what that does is, on a good connection, the bitrate is set to that. If you have a mobile device or crappy internet or crappy Wi-Fi or whatever else, what it does is it automatically determines, based on your device, what speeds of your internet connection, and reduces the bitrate down automatically, so everyone can actually watch without it being set to the maximum and then it buffering all the time. Which is smart. A lot of people don't use that, and only a few people are picking up on this. ABR has been around for a long time, going back to like the beginning of streaming video services of any type, including Netflix and whatever else. I don't check custom buffer size. Keyframe, for Beam it's 1, everybody else it tends to be 2, and I think YouTube's between 2 and 4. I usually just set it to 0 to let it do it auto. CPU usage, I leave on very fast. I've tried everyone else here, and it may look better, but the frame rate is terrible in the video and streaming, and it also eats your processor, your CPU. Sometimes, depending on your equipment, you could bump it to faster or fast, depending. But usually, very fast is default. And it looks the best for what it is. Ultra fast, it looks terrible. Profile, this should be either main or high. A lot of the streaming sites now are saying high, but it just depends. I think Beam says main, which is nice, because it's not as demanding as high. Tune, majority of the time you can set it to none. For like Beam, they ask you to set it to 0 latency. I mean, you can tune it to 0 latency, but some streaming sites really don't use that. And I have no additional options, which might be something I'll look into in the future. But I think with the rate control as is, this really doesn't work. But that's an assumption, so don't take it as gospel. And variable frame rate, I uncheck. Now, this is for streaming. I don't do the rescale at all, and I'll show you in a minute why. But as for recording, I pretty much leave it at standard. Make sure you change this to whatever you want. You can check this if you'd like. Some software doesn't like spaces, but whatever. For recording, MP4, I have it for 1 audio track. You can have up to 4 audio tracks, so you could have like a game audio track, voice audio track, and music audio track, like separate music, like Spotify or something. Now in here, I can't check it or show you because I'm actually recording. This uses the NVIDIA graphics card that's in the system. There is X264, this, and QuickSync depending. I found that at least on this system, on the GTX 970, this actually works well. On my game laptop I have, this does not work, period. So it depends on your card. Rescale output unchecked, custom, nothing. For recording, however, I do set it to CBR for constant. I do set a high bitrate. This is a 50 megabit bitrate. And depending on your system and how fast it is, you may have to play with this for like recording locally. Some systems, it may not record very well that high. You may have to set it to like 10 or 15 or 14, or sometimes even lower. For recording keyframe, I just set it to 2. Preset, you can go through different presets. I just set high quality. Sometimes you can do this to improve the video quality, frame rate wise. Profile, I have set to high. You even have the high 444p. That's very CPU intensive. That's more like, I don't know the specifics, but it's like true color, and it's kind of what the new 4K stuff is going to be. It uses 444. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I'll take criticism on that. Level, I believe this is the version of the H.264 that I usually leave it to auto, but a lot of software usually hovers around 4 to 4.1 and sometimes 4.2. If I'm wrong, let me know as well. I turn off 2-pass encoding because that eats the CPU. GPU, this allows you to select certain GPUs in your system to use. Be nice if you can set multiple, if you have multiple. And B-frames, from what I understand in most video things for recording and everything else, is usually 2. And for audio, you can change the bitrate for audio. I noticed that Beam Pro uses 96, everything else uses 128. So if you want to save some bandwidth room, you can drop this down to 96, which is fine. Anything lower than that, you can kind of start hearing tinny and mechanical type sounds. But that's the output settings. And you can play around on the streaming and recording for bit rates and rate control. It's just depending on your system and how much RAM you have, how fast your RAM is, how fast your CPU is, if it has hyperthreading, if it's an i3, an i5, an i7, or other. I'm going to say this as for Intel processors, AMD is a complete other beast. And most of the time AMD has problems with encoding. But for recording, I do suggest either this or the AMD version, if you can, if it works. Otherwise, just use the normal X264. Your CPU usage will shoot up a bit with X264 because there's no real hardware for that. It's software only. Let's see. Go to audio. Here, you can adjust several things. And depending on what devices you have enabled, this will fill up with other things. I'm very basic when I record. I don't set push to talk or hotkeys or anything. I'm just kind of simple basic on that. Sample rates you can adjust between these two. And I'm not sure, but I think depending on your hardware, you may have different sample rates, but I'm not sure on that. Channels, you can have mono or stereo. And these kind of are self-explanatory. Desktop audio device is typically like your default or your normal speakers. It could be headphones or speakers or a specific audio device. You can also have two different desktop sounds. This computer has a lot of things, as well as monitors. And this is where your mic or auxiliary audio device, so it could be mic or music, whatever else. In my case, I am using a virtual audio cable device for my microphone. It allows me to use a couple different tools that I found for fixing the audio so there's no background noise or removes background noise. I may do a video in the future showing what I do with that, but it seems to work pretty well. Do have to learn a couple things about the software. You can adjust like position and panning and like treble and bass and mids. But I tried messing with it the other day and it didn't really work, so I have to look into further about that. But this tab is actually very simple. The real pain is with using the software that I use is you have to figure out inputs and outputs. And it's kind of a circular thing because it's like taking my microphone and then sending it to what's called cable input, and then it goes through a program, and then it sends it to cable output, and then in OBS you have to set the cable output to actually get in your microphone. It's kind of a pain in the butt. And if you're not used to it or initially, it's really hard to understand. But let's move to video. Now here I can't show you anything for downscale filter or frames per second, but frames per second for this example. This video, since I'm not doing really anything, I've set it to 30. And my base resolution is 1080. But I've come to the realization that scaling it to 720 is typically the best thing to do, even on powerful hardware right now. It's surprising that nowadays, even with the computers that we have and the hardware that we have, we still have to reduce a lot of things to record. It seems really weird now. Downscaled filter I can't show you. There's usually 3 or 4 options. The best one, as it says here, is fastest but blurry of scaling, which is basically it gets a little blurry if you scale down or up depending. But by linear is usually the fastest and doesn't use much CPU. So that's really simple. You can play around with the frames per second, obviously 30 or 60. There's also 48, which is an interesting one. And you can also change this to, I think, integer-based frames, which I really don't know the difference between this and the other one, because we're kind of setting the same thing. But I can't show you because I'm recording at the same time. Hotkeys is good if you want to get more advanced into it. You can do like scene switching and muting audio and unmuting audio and doing all kinds of capturing and changing, muting and unmuting mics, push to talk, push to mute, stuff like that. I don't set this up. I'm pretty simple on that. Though I may start doing things where I set up to where I can switch between the game with webcam and to a webcam, and also removing the webcam depending on the cutscenes and whatnot. I'm going to play with that in the future. Other than that, I don't set this at all, like I said. So let's go ahead and go to advanced. I have moved process priority to idle. It seems to work well. Most of the time it should be normal. So either normal or idle. I was messing around with it and set it to idle, and the CPU usage doesn't seem to be very high on idle, so that's a good thing. But it's acting like it's not even running, so that's the priority. Renderer is Direct3D 11. There are other settings, but typically just leave it at Direct3D 11. If you're having issues, you can change it to OpenGL, but it does slow down the recording. Video adapter recording or not is grayed out for me. You typically, at least from what I've seen on this computer and my laptop, it's grayed out and you can't change anything. Color format, you have a couple different options. I think there's 3 of them. It's best to leave it at NV12. I think there's an RGB setting, and I can't show you, so I don't know which one it is, but it's either in this or this. You can change it to RGB, which is better color and whatnot on the video, but typically NV12 is good for recording and streaming, and that's default usually. Now, UV color space and color range, you can set that higher in full as well, and the colors would look a lot nicer, but the CPU usage shoots up like crazy. So I think 601 is the bottom, and partial color, as my phone makes some noises. Leaving this as is default, and that's where it should be. Otherwise, you have CPU usage and other problems. The file name formatting, I don't change. If you want to get into that, you can do that. And it tells you what the codes are if you hover over it. Overwrites if file exists. I uncheck that because sometimes I mess up on videos, so I want to overwrite something that I did like an hour of. And stream delay, you can actually set to delay your stream. I turn it off. It's not necessary to have a stream delay. In fact, it's probably better to leave it off and not have one anyway. And that's interesting, but I think with it being disabled, it doesn't matter. And automatically reconnect is basically it tries to reconnect to the streaming services, I believe. That's default. Network, that's default as well, because I don't mess with that. So really, that's all there is, at least in the settings. If you go to like streaming, see, it's very basic. It's actually a lot more detailed than the older OBS. But on video, I do the outscale resolution here, and I don't do it on the output. And it seems to work better. If you do it this way, it doesn't seem like it works well. But either way, I believe does work, so I just do it on the video one because it makes more sense to me. So that's pretty much it. There's not too much else in here settings wise. I mean, there's some other things I can go into. You can edit the transform. Basically, it's the size of this window and whatnot, and you can adjust it. Obviously, if you don't know, you can move this stuff around for like the screen. You can add your webcams and whatnot in here, and a bunch of other stuff. They're adding a lot more things to OBS Studio. You can actually drop text in now, I think, like text files, which is nice. Scenes, basically just different scenes that you can switch between. So like this would be like gameplay, and another one could be like a full-on, like a webcam with a background, so you can talk to people like in beginnings and middles and ends of streams and videos. Also just random other stuff. You can have web pages and images and slideshows and a bunch of other stuff. But that's all miscellaneous to actual settings. And you can create profiles, which it won't show me because it's recording, but it's untitled. Toolbars, I don't really change anything. And lock preview, I don't know what lock preview is. Like I said, I'm not a professional streamer and recorder. I'm not the company, but other than that, that's it. One thing though is you probably should update to, if you're on Windows, update to the newer version, because there's some temporary fixes for issues. Some people are still having problems, but I think it's depending on the games. But Mac and Linux, I think, are fine. There's no problems currently. But if you go to like download and then go to view on GitHub, and I believe it's still in the history, you can go to releases, and it will actually tell you the change logs. Which, like in the video I did the other day, this one is important for the problems that Windows 10 anniversary update did. And it looks like, okay, that are just included. So there you have it. That's really it. Simple wise. I don't mess with any of this. Mixers, you can play around in here and down mix mic to mono. This you can offset depending on your hardware if there is a delay. Like if you're playing through a TV and recording through a recording device, you may have to change the sync because of the delay in the game and the recording and sending it through a TV and whatnot. So there's that. You can select the 4 tracks for the audio. So you can have like mic and music and da-da-da-da. Never really played with that. There's some interesting things you can do. You can set desktop audio to track 2 or game audio to track 2, and it will record it in separate tracks. So that's kind of interesting if you're editing. But you have to have a really good editing program. Otherwise, if you're using like Movie Maker and stuff, which is going out from Microsoft, it won't see the different tracks. You actually have to mess around with it to get it to work. So I'm sorry about how the video is and I'm jumping around and whatnot. But yeah, those are all the settings. That's really important. It's really not as hard as it seems. But yeah, it's that simple. So yeah, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, complain, check the affiliate links, social media links. If you buy things through the affiliate links, I actually get paid. I don't get paid by YouTube. I'm actually not able to. That's another story. But yeah. So thanks for watching and have a good day.